rip the Band-Aid off with their ridiculous rack plugin and make the individual VSTs available in all their glory and focus on what that company does best.
Do you think it's going to happen?
No. Absolutely not.
In this video, I'm talking to my good friend Swaran about the future of Reason. Both of us are longtime Reason users and have some opinions. We're also launching a channel together, so if you want to help us get it off the ground, subscribe below. This video is the first one that we have posted on the channel. And if you're interested in picking up the new version of Reason with a discount, check out the affiliate link I have in the description. Hopefully you enjoy our takes on where Reason is at and where we think the company is going. I really like a lot of Swaran's opinions on this, and don't forget to subscribe to our new channel if you feel like helping us out. All right, back to this video.
You haven't used Reason 14, have you?
I have not used Reason 14. I wasn't super enthused about Reason 13 or 12 either.
What version did you start on?
Reason 3.
And I started with Reason 5, I think.
Yeah.
Whoa, it's 6. Reason to record. That was 6. Why did you choose to use Reason when you were 12?
Oh man, I'll tell you a story.
Okay.
Dad came home from his business trip in Indonesia with a whole bunch of bootleg software, and I took to Reason 3 immediately because Reason 3 was just like this amazing virtualized rack instrument scenario with a sequencer, and it was quite logical and it was quite reasonable in terms of being able to understand where things were. Started making beats super quickly.
Had you used DAW before Reason?
Yes, I did. I used a very, very early version of Pro Tools.
I got started on Pro Tools 6, and then someone installed a cracked version of FL on the high school computer. And so that was my introduction to like MIDI sequencing.
Yeah.
You got me into Reason
Yeah.
because I didn't want to pirate software.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I liked the idea
Hey,
of...
Reason used to be Reason used to be pretty well priced back in the day.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah.
But I like the idea of it all being there. You didn't need to get a whole lot of third-party VSTs because back then there weren't so many great free VST options anyway.
No. And none that had the polish and pizzazz of these instruments and effects you could get in Reason. The really cool thing about it was that they were quite principled in their approach to how these effects and instruments interacted with each other. You could always hit undo and your settings would undo.
Yeah.
Which isn't something you'd be able to get out of a VST instrument at the time anyway. I produced my own EP. I produced 4 other bodies of work and a range of singles that had really good streaming and radio play at the time, all within Reason, and I really flogged that horse to death.
I loved Reason. I would always get into arguments with a friend of ours from uni who was using Ableton as to why Reason was better and he should switch.
Yeah. Funny.
Then I switched to Ableton.
Yeah.
I switched to Ableton reluctantly. I was producing a lot of music that I was chopping and sampling and resampling and doing a lot of that kind of workflow.
Yeah.
And I squeezed everything I possibly could out of Reason in terms of manipulating audio with that workflow.
Yeah.
And then I wanted to explore Ableton anyway because I was teaching and had students who were interested in Ableton. So I just bought the Suite version with an education discount. But it was still expensive.
Yeah.
And the first 2 weeks of using Ableton sucked. I was like, what the hell have I done?
Yeah.
This is really unfamiliar interface. This doesn't sound like my music. And then I got the hang of it and realized that for what I was trying to do, it was so much more effective and so much faster. And then Reason released the rack plugin, and I was like, perfect. This is the best of both worlds.
Yeah. Which I reckon is so silly.
What's so silly?
The rack plugin.
I like the idea of the rack plugin because it allows you to use the Reason tools, and I loved a lot of the Reason tools.
Yeah.
I ultimately don't think it was implemented very well. When they released Reason Plus, I was a part of a focus group that was giving them suggestions on like what Reason Plus should include and what it should look like, and heaps of ideas and the Reason Rack plugin and stuff.
Yeah.
And ultimately, a lot of what we discussed and what we suggested never got implemented, but that was a really interesting time, kind of like going back and forward with a whole bunch of people about like what we would like Reason to look like. I don't think they ever really took it as far as it should have been or could have been. The interesting thing now is going from a point where I was all about Reason to having an existential crisis of should I leave Reason for Ableton to being like, oh my gosh, I can keep Reason because I've got a Reason Rack plugin, to now I still use Reason sometimes, but Ableton has become a reliable workhorse that I use every single day, and I find myself using Reason less because I don't like the packaging of the plugin.
There is absolutely no way there could have been any other outcome from releasing a Rack plugin. You're essentially taking a fully featured DAW, you're cutting it down so only the sounds are available on an arguably more popular platform, and you're cannibalizing your own DAW. There was only one way this could have gone, which is Reason losing market share to every other DAW that had a VST plugin feature.
I wanted them to make the Rack the main product. Maybe Reason was just completely free as a DAW. You could download it and you had like a basic rack.
Right.
And then the main product was the full featured rack that could be used inside this like Reason Playground, or it could be used inside a VST that you could take into whatever space you wanted to. That's how I would have loved to have seen it used, because I don't think the DAW is able to keep up with other players.
It doesn't look like it, eh?
No.
It doesn't look like it at all. You know, what keeps us from coming back to Reason is essentially its speed. A really good example was where I'd have combinators in Reason. If I wanted to deploy a certain type of sound really quick, I could kind of just deploy this combinator and still have to go through a bunch of clicks in order to sidechain that sound against the drums. In Ableton, it's 2 clicks. That's fundamentally the core of the issue, I think, with Reason, is that they've spent so much effort since Reason was invented to have it look and feel like a real rack instrument. And when you press tab, you turn it around, you have all of your connections and you can plug things in. There's a certain layer of abstraction that is unavailable with Reason at that level. That abstraction is required in order to make your process faster. Instead of having to turn the rack around and plug and unplug patch cables, I just kind of wanted to have just a compressor ready to go.
They've got some stuff now. They've got a sidechain tool.
It does.
And it's great. This is the constant tension I have with Reason, is I feel like a lot of their tools are fantastic.
Yeah, I agree. The new reverb?
The new reverb is incredible.
It's outrageous, yeah.
It looks amazing.
Yeah.
And I want to use it.
Yeah.
But the Rack plugin makes it really hard to implement it into workflows because it's just so janky to use.
Yeah, totally.
There are very few plugins and effects from a utility point of view that I can't just pull in quickly in Ableton, whether that's an EQ or whether that's a utility tool. And so as much as I love a lot of the stuff in Reason, unless I'm actively trying to use it for a creative purpose, I don't find myself using Reason tools as go-to utilities.
Yeah.
Despite the fact that I think many of them are fantastic.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. The number one reason why we don't use Reason, I think, is because it's a bit janky and unwieldy to use quickly. And I think it's because, at its core, Reason has a UI abstraction problem. And it's been trying to attack that lately while still trying to bring new features to market in order to gain some parity with the rest of the DAW landscape. But at the moment, it's not really a winner in any category of DAWs.
Well, this is what we were talking about with the UI thing.
Yeah.
The idea that when it comes to designing instruments and effects, their user interfaces, for the most part, I think, are fantastic.
Yeah.
Really intuitive and easy to use. They look great.
Yeah.
The rack itself and everything involved in the rack is a pleasure to use for the most part. But the moment you leave the rack and you go
into the sequencer,
everything doesn't look like it's integrated. You have different design languages all over the place. Features are half-baked. Like this, I started feeling that way when they released crossfades, because they didn't have crossfades. And they released it, and it was the worst implementation of crossfades I'd ever used.
Really? The worst?
The worst.
Yeah.
It was appalling.
You know, I don't even really use crossfades in my workflow on any DAW, but yeah, it's like if I would, I wouldn't use Reason for it.
I did a lot because when I was chopping and kind of like slicing and doing stuff with audio, it would be really useful to kind of like get rid of little pops and clips and stuff at the end of different things on that. So I used to use crossfades a lot. And Ableton's crossfades are incredibly useful.
Yeah.
Premiere Pro has better crossfade functionality than Reason. Reasons were so half-baked.
Damn.
It was like just like... And it's just like a simple feature.
Yeah.
That kind of became how I felt they implemented every new feature. It was like a... Good enough, like it's there. It's a feature. We can say it's a feature, but it's not actually...
I lied to you. I have used Reason relatively recently in the lead up to this, all of this. The thing that was most jarring for me from a UI language perspective is the MIDI controls. The MIDI controls are a completely different, to me anyway, a completely different design language to everything else. The rack, the mixer, the rest of the sequencer. It's jarring.
You're talking about the MIDI controls within the piano roll.
Yeah.
That menu, like Ableton's one.
Correct, yeah.
That looks like a whole bunch of rectangles.
Yeah.
Because they implemented that after they got rid of the floating window that I think used to be on F8 maybe.
Yeah.
Where you could like perform functions.
Yeah.
And the idea was great because that was always a great part of Ableton's piano roll, was having the tools just there.
Yeah, it really felt like a painter's palette, right?
Yeah.
You could, while you're in your piano roll, you had that F8 ready to go and you can apply some MIDI tools as you were going along to make your life easier, and it was a good idea. It felt like an 80% implementation at the time, but the problem is that it still feels half-baked now.
It still feels half-baked now. Yeah, and
I think Reason's
it's
in
difficult
an
to look
crisis.
at. It's difficult to look at, which is the problem that I have. And this is what confuses me the most about the UI is how is it possible that the rack and the devices there are so great to look at, the user interface is so perfect.
Yeah.
And then you go to something which is essentially just presenting text values.
Yeah.
And they can't make that
consistent
or easy to look at or easy to use.
Yeah.
And then
they obviously have the designers and they obviously have the talent to be able to put that together. Reason is in an identity crisis. 100%.
Why don't you go back to Reason?
Why don't I go back to Reason?
As a DAW.
Oh, okay.
As a DAW.
Why don't I go back to Reason as a DAW? Ableton is faster. Ableton is cleaner from a UI perspective. It's also way more featured. In the time that it took for Reason to go from 13 to 14, we had point updates in Ableton Live that were way more featured.
I made a video
Reason had released
about that.
Yeah.
When Reason 13 released, I thought it was ironic because the same week Reason 13 was released, Ableton 12.3 was released, which was a free point update that had more new features than the entire Reason 13 update.
They had overhauled a bunch of MIDI controls and they were so musical. Stem separation built in live was in 12.3.
Was it?
Yeah, and then 12.4, the recent one was...
12.4 just released the same week as Reason 14 released. And 12.4...
They're trolling.
Maybe had just as many features as Reason 14. And 12.4 is a free update.
Yeah.
So in two complete versions of Reason, Ableton's released more in two free point updates.
You know, I would throw money at Reason for them to bolster their development capability so they could output the stuff a little bit more quicker and a little bit more cohesively. There is not much stopping me from getting back into Reason simply because I've used it for a very, very long time. But unless they find a way to make it faster and still stay true to their core design beliefs, that isn't going to happen.
I think Reason was great for what it was, but it hasn't become anything.
Yeah.
Like Ableton has become great for idea generation, great for live use. Like I use it literally every day, most of the day in my studio, like just to have everything there ready to go. Other DAWs are better for other things. FL is really known for sequencing. Cubase is known for MIDI and scoring.
Yeah.
Logic is just a generally good all-round DAW, I think. But Reason doesn't excel in any of these categories. If you couldn't use Ableton anymore, would you go back to Reason or would you learn a different DAW?
I'd go back to Reason, honestly.
You go back to Reason?
Yeah, I'd go back to Reason because there's a lot of muscle memory there. At the end of the day, Reason used to be really good at getting an idea from your head into your computer as quickly as possible. They seem to have lost their way a little bit in that regard. And Ableton has become, for me, the de facto tool to be able to get what's in my head out onto the computer.
Well, like, here's what I'm worried with Reason. if I were to go back to it. Because I don't know if I would. Like, if Ableton went away today, I might consider Logic.
Sure.
Because I already have it.
Yeah.
I don't really use it, but I have it. There's no other DAWs like I'm really particularly interested in trying.
Yeah.
The new Fender one. Like, I want to try it, but I...
Fender.
But, and Cubase, Cubase looks great. I've never really felt inspired by Cubase. But the thing that I'm concerned with about Reason is I don't know where they're going. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not confident in the future of the company.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sure they'll stick around for a while, but the rate at which they kind of seem to change stuff and change direction and not update things, I don't know if it feels like something that I can have be the backbone of all of my production needs.
You know, you've known me for a while. I'm a bit of a forever optimist. And I think that with this new cache injection from LANDR, I think Reason is trying to get up to some feature parity with the rest of the DAW environment at the moment, right? That's what this Reason 14 feels like to me.
Yeah,
right?
I agree.
And they might be fumbling over themselves in order to get the stuff out. Maybe it's a little bit half-baked, but just the fact that these features are there means something, because it means that you can compete in a market on paper with everything else. I believe there's a lot of pain ahead for Reason in order to build some feature parity with everything else, so they can keep their audience captured, so they can continue to innovate. When the news came out about LANDR acquiring Reason Studios and all that stuff, it had made me feel a little nervous about the company.
I've been really happy with everything that LANDR has done. I think they overhauled the pricing structure.
I think that's a controversial take for the internet. I reckon people will be like, "Oh, what are you talking about, man?"
Well, what aren't you happy with about LANDR?
Oh no, I agree with you.
Yeah, I think they improved the pricing structure,
Yeah.
which was far too expensive and not well thought out. I now think it looks really, really good.
Yeah.
I have yet to test all of LANDR's plugins and stuff, so I'm a little bit indifferent to that.
Yeah.
But I think the changes they made with the pricing structure are good. It seems like Reason 14 is a little bit of a reset. I don't really think it's a meaningful upgrade in the sense that the workflow improvements that they've added, I think, have been implemented fine. Like, I don't think there's anything overly groundbreaking about them, and I think there's a whole lot of room for improvement. And they still don't do enough to bring Reason to the level of competing with other DAWs. But I think it shows that they're moving in the right direction. And if Reason 14 becomes a reset for, okay, now we're moving here, then awesome. Like I said in my video, though, that if you just use the Reason Rack plugin, it's not an update because you got a single device and no other maintenance on what is a janky plugin to use. So I hope they change that. I'd almost like to see them split Reason into two products: the Rack and everything you can do there that could be the plugin,
100% disagree.
and a DAW.
100% disagree.
Why?
I think Reason should kill their Rack plugin
Why?
because it is cannibalizing their own market share.
Do you not think that they could get more people using the plugin?
Sell the individual Rack items as their own plugins. If they really wanted
Okay.
to do that, and they do that within their own Ableton environment, then sure, they could do that. But the Rack plugin has done way more harm than good for Reason. It's probably kept a revenue stream up for them,
If
but
Reason had a subscription where I was able to use all of the Reason VSTs, like you just get all of the VSTs, kind of like Native Instruments does, right?
Yep.
Like you buy complete, you get all of the things to use as a VST. If you could do that with Reason, I would be so down. In fact, I would rather use the Reason plugins and effects and devices as individual VSTs because
Reason complete.
I don't like the wrapper of the Reason Rack plugin.
Totally.
I think it's just really poorly implemented.
Totally.
So if they did that, I would be so keen. I would use all of them. I would set up chains and device racks and Ableton with all of the Reason stuff.
Yeah.
If you do want to play around with the rack features, then you open up Reason the DAW. Its selling point is it's like, here are all our devices in rack form.
Yeah.
And that's kind of cool all of a sudden.
What is really clear about Reason 14 is, again, they're in an identity crisis. There is a whole lot that they want to do to reach parity, and they still do think of themselves as a DAW company. But the design language is really important. Their ability to move around quickly in the DAW is really important, and I don't think that they've nailed that yet.
I want to see them embrace the skeuomorphism in every aspect. I want to see the track panel that they've just added become an actual mixer channel from the mixer. You know, there's some stuff where it's obviously not sensible, like Reason can keep its play buttons, like whatever, like that doesn't have to be kind of made into like hardware buttons. But I don't think there's any reason not to kind of like lean into that aesthetic and just have the whole thing be centered around.
I think that skeuomorphism and speed are diametrically opposed, and I think Reason knows that.
But what have they done to promote speed.
Well, they've created this sort of half-baked UI that we're seeing now.
That's not fast.
It's not fast because it's trying to do all things for all people. Like, take for example the track fader.
Yeah.
The track fader is jarring against the piano roll controls. It's jarring against the rest of the sequencer because it's this heavily skew morphed SSL looking mixer fader and all of the controls that happen above that, but not as SSL looking as the actual mixer page where it is completely different. But the fact that it's there at all is Reason trying to satisfy their sort of core market design sensibilities around skew morphism whilst still abstracting it enough in order to be able to get that speed that they're after. And I think the biggest issue with Reason at this point, you can't do both at 100%. One is a trade-off of the other. And so that is the identity crisis that they're in. And that's why Reason 14 feels quite half-baked. There needs to be some leadership at Reason Studios or at LANDR or at whatever level. There needs to be some leadership there in making a decision as to, hey, this is the unified design language that we are going to be applying from the top down, and then having that be applied from the top down. Right? Because right now it feels like a patchwork of design and UI ideas.
So where do you think Reason's going?
I think Reason is going through some pain at the moment, and I think this pain is good. I think with this cash injection from LANDR and hopefully with these fresh and new ideas, Reason is going to go through some pain and re-identifying themselves. And what this may lead to, I hope, is a more uniform design language across the board, a more mature implementation of their skeuomorphic UI style that hopefully still preserves what they're really good at, which is making great instruments.
I was thinking about this idea.
Okay.
Do you think Reason is a good choice for people to get into these days?
No.
Why? Because I kind of agree, and it makes me a little sad.
Yeah, it makes you really sad. I am the biggest Reason fanboy. I've been convincing many people to go down the Reason route. I don't think it is great for beginners to get into.
Which is ironic because a lot of people say, oh, it's like real audio, so it's good for learning the rack and workflow and stuff.
Which is true.
Which is true.
If your
goal is to learn how audio writing works.
Well, that's actually a little bit further higher up than that. If you come from that world where you understand signal chain, physical racks and the signal chain that's involved there. It's very easy for somebody who has come from a cab and amp world or, physical 19-inch rack world to see like, oh, hey, this is a splitter, this is a merger, this is why we use these things.
One thing I noticed when I switched to Ableton is it's still pretty straightforward to understand signal flow. I don't really think that's an argument. And Ableton's done a lot for education. Like, their website has interactive websites now which teach you about music, which teach you how to make beats, basically. Then you can open it and continue inside Ableton.
Yeah.
They've got the app. They've got Move. They've got all of these ways to interact with it.
Yeah.
Ableton's expensive. The education pricing makes it a hell of a lot cheaper. And they've got rent to own now.
Yeah, that's a good move.
It's extremely accessible.
Yeah, that's a good move.
And despite how much I love Reason, I have never once recommended it to a student as a DAW to get into. These days, I'm just telling people to use Ableton. What Ableton's done to make it a sensible choice from an education point of view. Like, in 12.4, I don't know if you saw, they released a help panel that has built-in tutorials and videos for people to follow to get used to what's going on in Ableton. Never mind the fact that you've got the little help menu that you can pop up at any time. It tells you in detail about any aspect.
Yeah, the info panel, The
nice thing about Reason, I think, is it's not intimidating from a UI point of view. It's quite simple to use and simple to look at. Whereas the feedback I've had from a lot of people with Ableton is like, oh, it feels like overwhelming. There's a lot of information.
It feels like
on
you're in
the
a rocket
screen.
ship, eh?
Which, if you just take a second and learn where stuff is in Ableton, it's not overwhelming. You can quite easily be like, oh, this is that. I don't need to go any deeper.
I genuinely think that every DAW to a beginner looks overwhelming.
Yeah, I would say so.
I
think the difference with Ableton is because it's flat and it looks like a spreadsheet.
Flat and uniform.
Whereas Reason, looks kind of nice and inviting in some regards.
What do you think is going to be the future of Reason 14? Or the future of Reason?
What I would like to see happen after what you suggested is have them create a subscription where you can get all of their plugins in VST format. Even their utilities, like the sidechain tool, like their EQs. Like, if I could get that as a VST, they would become heavily part of my workflow again.
Yeah. I think if Reason leaned into that, it would change the company entirely.
If they don't do that, I just want to see them make the Reason Rack plugin something that's actually nice to use.
Yeah.
What I'm expecting to see is slow iterations in the right direction, but I fear that they are too far behind to actually play catch up in any meaningful way. Like, I don't see them on the same playing field as Cubase, FL, Logic, Ableton, Studio One, or which is now Fender, Bitwig, Reaper.
Unless LANDR's AI features become fully fledged within Reason.
Do you think they will?
They're in a competing market. You do one of two things: you either standardize in order to go faster, or you innovate with new technologies.
That would be a very interesting situation.
Yeah. I think the moment LANDR throws their full AI suite of audio manipulation to Reason is the moment I think the story will change for Reason quite
significantly. Because they've added, like, the LANDR stuff now doesn't feel integrated into Reason. It's something you can use on the side.
Totally.
Honestly, I think my dream situation at this point would be, as part of your Reason Plus subscription, you get access to all of Reason's effects VSTs if you want to use them elsewhere. Ditch the Reason Rack plugin. Cool. I don't really care about that. When I use the Reason Rack plugin, I'm not really doing Reason Rack stuff in it anyway.
Yeah.
And it actually ends up being more of a hassle most of the time to get MIDI and stuff out of the Reason Rack plugin.
Yeah.
I'd love to see them ditch the Reason Rack plugin. I'd love to see all of their tools available as VSTs. And I'd love for Reason to become the playground where you can use those tools in a rack format.
Yeah.
And then maybe there is a bunch of the LANDR AI stuff built in. I'd like them to bring Rewire back as well. That would be nice.
I mean, what's Ableton doing now with their link systems?
Oh yeah.
What if that became open to Reason DAW and you could essentially link? Man, link is like Rewire on steroids. There is very, very little latency between two machines that are networked by wire using link, right? Imagine if that integrated with other DAWs. Imagine if that integrated with Reason directly, and you could use and link up your Reason DAW entirely with Ableton in order to enable that.
That would be nice.
Yeah.
All of the other DAWs release a lot each version update. Yeah, every DAW has its issues, but usually there is some kind of innovative take on stuff in some capacity. Do you think it matters that Reason's limited feature set and kind of like slower updates? Like, maybe put it this way.
Yeah.
No one's out there using the MPC software on the computer as their primary DAW. It's not even in the conversation.
Yeah.
But or Machine. No one's out there using Machine as your primary DAW. But you kind of can if you feel like it. Like, you can make full stuff on it.
Yeah.
I feel like I kind of see Reason a little bit more in that kind of sense. Reason's kind of like a cool boutique DAW that you can play with. I don't mind it having a somewhat limited feature set. I don't think it needs to try and compete with all of these other DAWs that do everything. If Reason leans into, like, we're going to be a rack playground, and the tools that we have are designed to work well in the context of it being this rack playground, and we've actually implemented these tools really well. It's not all of them.
Yeah.
It's like, it's a selection of tools that we feel like would be useful for making music in this rack playground, but we've actually implemented them well. And that's okay. If you want to go play around with another DAW that is better for scoring or MIDI or live stuff, then great, you can do that. I kind of would like to see that, I think. Like, unashamedly...
Just rip the Band-Aid off with
what it is. Like, Reason is what it is.
Yeah, exactly. Rip the Band-Aid off with their ridiculous rack plugin and make the individual VSTs available in all their glory and focus on what that company does best.
Do you think it's going to happen?
No. Absolutely not.
Oh dear.
You know what I think Reason does really well is the mixer. I really love the old school SSL mixers, the 4000 series mixers. And I think their reproduction of it, especially the glue compressor, their entire implementation, there just feels like you're tracking on a big 108 channel monster machine.
Yeah.
And I think they implemented that beautifully from an overall mix and tracking standpoint inside the box. I think nothing comes close to that feeling with software than with the Reason mixer. I think they do that extremely well. I think if they were to go to a full VST model, that would be lost. I think we often forget about that between you and me. The mixer in Reason is killer.
The mixer is great.
Yeah. let's hope that Reason keeps listening to its customers.
Yeah, I'm encouraged by LANDR taking over what they've done in this recent release.
Definitely.
I think it shows that they're looking in the right direction. I'm excited to see what their trajectory looks like.
Yeah, so am I.